The silence of his penthouse was a tomb. Elias Thorne stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, a crystal tumbler of amber whiskey hanging from his limp fingers, untouched. 37 floors below, the city pulsed with light and life, a vibrant, beating heart that mocked the stillness within him. The signed merger documents lay on the obsidian desk behind him, a deal that had just cemented his fortune, multiplying it by a sum most couldn't even conceptualize. He should have been euphoric. He should have been calling for champagne. Instead, he was utterly, completely alone. The victory was ash in his mouth. He had spent a decade building an empire, believing that wealth was the antidote to the poverty of his past, the ultimate shield against ever feeling powerless again. He had clawed his way up from nothing, sacrificing everything, his youth, his relationships, his marriage, on the altar of ambition. And now, at the summit, he discovered the air was too thin to breathe. The memory of his ex-wife's final, cutting words echoed in the sterile air. "You can buy a house, Elias, but you'll never know how to make it a home. One day, you'll look at all you've built and see nothing but an empty museum of your own failures." She was right. The grand art on the walls felt cold and borrowed. The expensive furniture held no memories, only price tags. His success was a beautifully tailored suit he was wearing to his own emotional funeral. A single, hot tear traced a path down his cheek, a shocking breach in his ironclad control. It was the first crack in the dam, a moment of devastating clarity. He was a millionaire who owned everything and nothing at all. The loss wasn't of a person, but of his own soul, and the heartbreak was for the man he might have been. The corporate jet touched down on the private airstrip a week later. Elias hadn't planned to return to his childhood town of Cedar Brook, nor to the sprawling, empty manor he'd bought for his ex-wife and son, Leo, as a hollow peace offering before the divorce. The plan had been to lose himself in the anonymity of Monaco, but the crushing loneliness of his penthouse had forced a different instinct, a primal, unexpected pull toward the only remnants of family he had left. He arrived unannounced. His Ferrari purred up the long, oak-lined driveway, a stark, aggressive contrast to the quiet, suburban street. The house, a monument to his financial success, looked perfect, immaculately landscaped. Yet, it felt just as empty as his apartment in the city. He killed the engine, the silence feeling heavier here, laden with the ghosts of his failed promises. He let himself in with a key he wasn't sure would still work. The grand foyer was spotless, silent. And then he heard it. From the sun-drenched kitchen at the back of the house, a sound he rarely heard his 7-year-old son's laughter. It was a bright, unfettered sound that tightened something in Elias's chest. He moved on quiet feet, drawn to the noise like a moth to a flame. He paused in the doorway, hidden by the frame. The scene before him was a tableau of domestic warmth that felt both foreign and painfully intimate. Leo was perched on a stool at the large kitchen island, diligently coloring. Standing beside him was Clara, the housekeeper Elias had hired based on impeccable references. She was humming softly, kneading dough, her dark hands dusted with flour. The afternoon sun caught the silver threads in her braided hair and lit up the room with a golden glow. Elias watched, a strange emotion stirring in him. Not jealousy, but a deep, aching confusion. This was not the sterile, professional interaction he paid for. This was something else. Then it happened. Leo held up his drawing. "Look, Mommy! I made the dog blue." The word hit Elias like a physical blow. "Mommy." Time slowed. He saw Clara's gentle smile, the way she didn't correct him. She leaned over, wiping a smudge of blue marker from his cheek, with a tenderness that seemed to suck all the air out of the room. "It's a masterpiece, my love," she said, her voice a soft, warm melody. "A blue dog is a special dog, my love." Elias's world fractured. A white hot bolt of denial followed by searing irrational pain shot through him. This woman, this stranger, was being called Mommy by his son. She was usurping a title that belonged to who? His ex-wife, who had moved to Paris and sent expensive gifts in lieu of visits. Or himself, the absent father who called from boardrooms and forgot birthdays. His polished composure shattered. He stepped into the kitchen, his voice a cold, sharp blade cutting through the warm air. "What is going on here?" Leo jumped, his eyes widening in a mixture of surprise and fear at the sudden appearance of his father. Clara straightened up, her own expression shifting from warmth to guarded surprise, but not fear. Never fear. She met his gaze with a calm steadiness that infuriated him further. Mr. Thorne, we weren't expecting you," she said, her voice even. Clearly, Elias bit out, his gaze swinging to his son. "Leo, why would you call Clara that?" Leo shrunk back, his lower lip trembling. The drawing of the blue dog crumpled in his small fist. Clara took a small, deliberate step, placing herself slightly between Elias and the boy. It was a subtle, protective gesture that screamed more of motherhood than any word ever could. "Sir," she said, her tone still respectful but now firm, layered with an unspoken warning. "Perhaps we could discuss this elsewhere." But Elias was lost in the storm of his own pain. He saw not a kind woman caring for his lonely child, but a betrayal. He saw his failure as a father reflected back at him in this domestic scene, and he could not bear it. The empire builder, the master of mergers, was completely disarmed by a single word uttered in a sunlit kitchen. The walls of his denial were crumbling, and all that was left was the raw, excruciating pain of realizing he had become a ghost in his own son's life. The study was a room Elias had designed to impress. Leather-bound books he'd never read, a mahogany desk of intimidating size, awards under glass. It was a stage set for a character named Elias Thorne, Success. Now, standing in it, he felt like a fraud. Clara closed the double doors softly behind them. She didn't speak, simply waited, her hands clasped in front of her flour-dusted apron. Her silence was more powerful than any argument. "Explain yourself," Elias demanded, though the command sounded weak, hollow, even to his own ears. She took a breath, not in nervousness, but as a person gathering truth. "What would you like me to explain, Mr. Thorne? That your son is a bright, loving little boy who craves connection. That he calls me mommy, sometimes because that word for him doesn't just mean the woman who gave him birth. It means safety. It means comfort. It means the person who is there when he has a nightmare, who bandages his scraped knees, who cheers the loudest at his school play, and who listens to his stories about blue dogs." And each word was a precise, gentle tap against the shell of his denial. Elias wanted to rage, to fire her on the spot for her insolence. But he couldn't. The image of Leo's frightened eyes haunted him. "I provide for him," Elias said, the defense sounding pathetic. "This house, his school, his future. He is 7 years old," Clara interrupted, her voice softening with a profound, heartbreaking wisdom. "His future is right now. It's today. And today, he needed to show someone his blue dog. Today, he needed to be called my love. You pay me to keep a house clean, Mr. Thorne. But a child is not a house. You cannot hire out love and expect it to stay neatly in the corners." The fight drained out of him completely, leaving behind a vast, empty ache. He sank into the chair behind his expensive desk, not a powerful CEO, but a broken man. He put his head in his hands. The sobs that came were silent, racking things, born of a decade of misplaced priorities and emotional neglect. He expected Clara to leave to give him his dignity. Instead, he heard the quiet creak of the leather guest chair as she sat down across from him. "He talks about you all the time, you know," she said after a moment. "He has a map in his room. He puts pins in all the cities you fly to. He tells me, my daddy is the strongest man in the world. He's building a castle for us. He doesn't see your absence as abandonment. He sees it as a great quest. He is waiting for his hero to come home." The pain was unbearable now. It was the pain of truth, sharp and cleansing. "I don't know how," Elias whispered, the admission torn from the deepest, most wounded part of him. "I don't know how to be his father. I never had one. All I knew how to do was work, to provide, to never be poor and powerless again." The Clara nodded. "The past gave you hunger, sir. But it doesn't have to dictate your future. A child can be a great teacher if you are willing to be a humble student. Love isn't built in boardrooms. It's built on kitchen stools, over blue dogs and slightly burned cookies." She stood up then, leaving him with the rubble of his old self. "The question isn't whether you can buy him a castle, Mr. Thorne. The question is, will you come inside and live in it with him?" Elias didn't know how long he sat there. The sun moved across the room. When he finally emerged, his eyes were red, rimmed but clear. He walked back to the kitchen. Leo was still at the island, looking small and unsure. Elias's heart hammered against his ribs. He walked over and pulled up the other stool. It was the most difficult negotiation of his life. "Leo," he began, his voice rough with emotion. "I am so sorry." Leo looked up hesitant. "I think." Elias swallowed. I think a blue dog is the best kind of dog. Can you tell me about him? Leo's eyes lit up with a cautious hope. He slowly smoothed out the crumpled paper. His name is Azure, he said softly, and he can fly. Elias listened. He listened to every word about Azure's adventures. He didn't look at his phone. He didn't think about his emails. He was fully, completely there. Later, when Clara brought over a plate of slightly burned cookies fresh from the oven, Elias looked at her. "Thank you, Clara," he said, and the words carried the weight of a universe of gratitude. She simply smiled. "Would you like a cookie, Elias?" It was the first time she'd used his first name. He nodded. Taking one, he bit into it. It was warm, sweet, and imperfect. It tasted like a beginning. The journey wasn't instantaneous. There were stumbles, awkward silences, and missed cues. But Elias stayed. He learned to be present. He traded his tailored suits for jeans to play catch in the yard. He left his phone in another room during dinner. He learned the names of Leo's friends, and the intricacies of the blue dog's ever-expanding universe. He stopped building an empire, and started building a home. He discovered that true power wasn't in wealth or control, but in the courage to be vulnerable, to show up, and to love without a guarantee of return. The mansion was no longer a museum of his failures, but a workshop for their future. The silence was finally, blessedly, filled with the sound of a father and son learning to find their way back to each other, one blue dog at a time. Moral of the story: the greatest wealth you can ever build is not measured in money, but in the presence you offer and the love you nurture. A title, like dad or mom, is earned not through provision, but through connection, and it's never too late to come home and claim it.